Welcome to the Betting Above the Rim podcast. Today's date, December 26th, episode 108 of our podcast. Let's just get started with the tip-off topics, leading off with the NBA having their 5-game slate. And let's be honest, folks, this was a lot better than the NFL yesterday. I'm not saying it because I'm a basketball fan. I'm saying it because it's the truth. And the first game, we had fireworks right off the bat with New York Knicks winning 117-114 over the Spurs. Spurs covering as a 9-point favorite. And as much as you want to talk about the play of Wemby in his first Christmas game going off for 42 and 18, it's got to be the play of Mikkel Bridges. The Mikkel Bridges people thought the Knicks gave up too much for. 41 points, 17 to 25 from the floor. Karl Anthony Towns, 21 and 9. Brunson, 29 and 7. Hart, 12 and 12. Here is the crazy thing. I think the Knicks have had a different leading scorer, 5 different leading scorers in their last 6 games. Speaks to the depth of the New York Knicks team, who now sits 20 and 10 and third in the Eastern Conference. Game number 2 featured a big lead, an injury, and then, of course, the comeback. And that was the Minnesota Timberwolves winning 105-99 over Dallas, Minnesota covering as a short dog. Got to remember, folks, what this happened with this game is it was a huge lead, and what a performance, particularly late in the game by Anthony Edwards. 26 points. Julius Randle with a double-double, almost a triple-double, 23, 10, and 8. Rudy Gobert with a double-double. But the key thing is, and we'll get into it next in a couple of minutes when we get to Luka Dončić. But the thing I loved the most about the game was Kyrie. I know he was 5 and 14, 39 points. Folks, this thing was down 25. He almost brought him back by himself. What a performance by Kyrie. Minnesota gets to win 105-99. Game number 3 saw another underdog cover and actually get the flat-out win. And that was Philadelphia with a 118-114 win over the Celtics. Listen, when you look at this game, Joel Embiid, 1 rebound away from a double-double, 23 points, 9 rebounds. Tyrese Maxey, what can you say about him with 33 points, 12 assists? Caleb Martin, it was interesting. They dared him to shoot the ball from 3. 7-9 from 3, 23 points. And they basically outshot the Celtics in regards to percentage. 43% from 3. Boston, 40% from 3, 41%. Led by Jason Tatum with 32. 23 for Brown, 21 for White. Another key is Kristaps Porzingis injured. What's new with that? But the 76ers get their statement win, and let's see if they can keep the ball rolling. 4th game of the docket, so we don't know how much longer we're going to have them, but you have to enjoy the 115-113 win by the Lakers. LeBron James was magnificent as usual with 31 points, 10 rebounds. Anthony Davis only played 7 minutes. We'll talk about that a little bit really quickly. And then Austin Reeves with 26 and 10. Flip side, Steph balled out. Gave us what he came with 38 points, 21 and 12 by Andrew Wiggins as the Lakers get a big 115-113 win, and as Golden State continues to slide after a hot start. Last game of the day saw another team cover as a dog, and that was the Phoenix Suns winning 110-100, covering as a short dog. What can you say? What can you say about the great Kevin Durant, 27 points. Bradley Beal with 27. Remember, no Devin Booker in this game, 17 from Tyus Jones to offset Nikola Jokic's 25 and 15. So those are the 5 games in the NBA. Let's get to some injury news led by Luka Dončić, who came out of the game and walked out on crutches after injuring his calf, and he looks like he's going to be out for an extended period of time. This is going to be a big blow for Dallas Mavericks team, which obviously kind of leans on that 2-prong attack of Luka and Kyrie. I obviously talked about how well Kyrie played in the game yesterday. So it's going to be a lot on Kyrie Irving, scoring about 24 points a game. This is where Klay Thompson's got to step up. Klay Thompson getting you about 14.3 points per game. He only had 12, did not shoot the ball well against Minnesota. He has got to be better. So that is the key thing to look at. Couple other injury news. Anthony Davis left the game with the Lakers. We're going to see what that is. Same thing with Porzingis. These are two big men that do get hurt a lot. And you got to wonder what these teams do in regard to when you bring these guys back. Do you take your time with them or do you bring them back pretty quickly? I think as long as they stay in a playoff race, you try and keep them there. Speaking of guys wanting to be kept there, what in God's green earth is going on with Jimmy Butler? Jimmy Butler basically said in so many words, he prefers to trade out of Miami. Shocking, but here's the crazy part. Just a couple hours ago, Pat Riley came out in a press conference and said, we're not trading Jimmy Butler. Simply put, folks, here's what it comes down to. Jimmy Butler wants to be extended. Jimmy Butler has a $52.6, I do believe, $1 million player option for 25-26. He wants max money. He wants to go to a contender. Rockets being one, Warriors being another, maybe Phoenix, right? But here's the crazy part, folks. Look at the salary cap. Only the Brooklyn Nets have enough money to offer him as a free agent a max deal. So Jimmy doesn't play the cards here. Pat Riley does. And that's something you got to watch out for here in this situation is Riles rules what happens here with Jimmy Butler. Simply put, he can dare him to opt out, but no one's going to give him what he wants. So then he either goes to Brooklyn, which he won't, or it's got to be a signing trade, which means you got to have two to tango. Or Jimmy Butler just opts in, plays it another year, and then figures it out in a year from now. Here's the thing what's going to happen. Jimmy Butler is going to continue to be a distraction and try and force his way out of Miami. I know he likes Phoenix, but Phoenix didn't want a piece of Bradley Beal. Here's what you got to remember. If you look at the age of Bam Adebayo, you want to kind of do what you can to bring someone in that's in the same age as Bam. Bam is 27 years old. They want to center this around Bam, which is giving you 16.7 and 10. So Bradley Beal doesn't do it. Gotta watch out what happens in Miami. I think this gets ugly, but if there's someone that's not going to blink, it's going to be Pat Riley. Last tip-off topic is Sabrina Ionescu joined Unrivaled, and really an unprecedented deal for Sab to go join as the last wildcard member. Remember, 36 players in the league. Simply put, they had to get her. After missing out on Caitlin Clark, they had to get Sabrina Ionescu. I'm not saying Sab is the player of Caitlin Clark, but she's not far off of Caitlin Clark, and she's immensely popular. Remember, folks, here's a crazy stat. The number one shoe in the NBA in regards to minutes played is the Sabrina 2 shoe from Nike. Sabrina Ionescu has a lot more pull than people think, and it was extremely important for this Unrivaled league to go ahead and get someone of Sabrina Ionescu's caliber. Obviously, you wanted to get Caitlin Clark, and that would have sent it through the roof and really would have capitalized on the ratings of the league. But you know what? Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart, I'm sure they tried. This is something to watch out for. Sab joins Unrivaled. Next up, after the commercial break, we'll get into our awards tour. We'll break down the Eastern Conference and Western Conference odds. And along with that, I will give you who will be my number one seed. Not to win it, but get the number one seed in each conference. This is the Betting Above the Rim podcast. We will be back after this commercial break. Welcome back to the Betting Above the Rim podcast, and it's time for our award tour. Today, we're going to focus on the conference races in the Eastern and Western conferences. We'll talk about the East winner, we'll talk about the West winner, and then FanDuel came out with who will be the number one seed in each. Now, here's the thing, folks. It's easy for me to go in and just be chalk and just say, all right, simply put, I'm going to take the Celtics in the East, Oklahoma City in the West, and that's it. I'm not going to do that. There's one play I can't make because it's too far gone, and I'll get to it in a couple of minutes. But when it comes to the East, I'm not taking the Celtics on both. Folks, give me the New York Knicks at plus 470 to win the Eastern Conference. Simply put, their ability with their top five, and at any point, anyone can lead them in scoring, is something that is really, really important that I think people really need to undersize with this New York Knicks team. They seem to hit you in ways, folks, and something that's pretty interesting. I think the Knicks have, if I'm not mistaken, like 4 players in the top 100 in scoring. It's a weird stat. And then a 5th person is Josh Hart, who's the only player, if I get this right, that's getting 8 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and shooting 55% from the floor. The only other players to do it, ready? Sabonis, Giannis, and the Joker. Think how crazy of a stat that is for Josh Hart to get you 8 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and doing it all while shooting 55% from the floor. Because of that balance, because of the fact that Mitchell Robinson will come back at some point, we think, and the fact that I think you're going to make a trade, and I'm going to tell you right now, Leon Rose has not missed. Jalen Brunson, free agent. Josh Hart, trade. OG, trade. Cat, trade. Bridges, trade. Not one of those guys was drafted by the Knicks. He's 4-0 in his last 4 trades. I don't bet against him, and I don't bet against the Knicks at plus 470 to win the Eastern Conference. Now, when we talk about who's going to win the actual West, and let's say in the East, let's just go to the number 1 seeds. Right now, Boston is minus 110. Cleveland is at even money. Knicks are 11-1. Orlando's 65-1, and so on and so forth. You see where all the rest of those teams lie. So where do I go with this? This is where you take Boston. You're like, wait a minute, coach. Boston right now is sitting 4 games behind Cleveland. Folks, do you know that Boston has the 5th easiest schedule the rest of the way of the NBA according to Tankathon, including 2 games versus the Blazers, 2 versus Jazz, 2 versus the Hornets, 3 versus Toronto, 2 versus the Pelicans, 1 versus Washington. As compared to Cleveland, right, who's got the 9th toughest schedule, and the Knicks who have the 7th toughest schedule. So although Boston is 4 games behind, I think they catch Cleveland. Give me the Boston Celtics at minus 110 to have the number 1 record in the Eastern Conference. Let's head to the West. And let's kind of slow walk it here a little bit. Oklahoma City, plus 165. Dallas, 6-1. We just got the news on Luka. Denver, 7-1. Memphis, 10-1. Minnesota, 11-1. 13-1 for Phoenix, 13-1 for Golden State, Houston 15-1, so on and so forth. And you saw, like I talked about before, I liked the Celtics win the East. That was in June. I also like the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the West. That was in June. And I'm sticking with that pick at plus 165. Simply put, they're going to have home court advantage. They're playing really well. Chet should be back at some point during the year. And Sam Presti's got an absolute boatload of draft picks if he wants to go ahead and make one last swing for another wing scorer. So when you look at the depth, when you look at the way that this team has played with SGA, who I think right now, in my opinion, I know you're going to talk about, obviously, the Joker. My opinion, SGA is the MVP, who's giving you at 30.6 points per game, right? 6.1 rebounds. Listen, I'm not crazy about the way he's shooting from 3 at 34%, but for his career, that's right where he's at. You have to think that that's a team you have to look at. right, in order for a team to win the Western Conference. If there are a sleeper, Matty George, my producer, does a great job, likes Memphis at 10-1. And I could see this. Got to remember, folks, Memphis, a couple of years ago, was the number 2 seed. For Memphis, it's honestly about staying healthy. If they can stay healthy at 10-1, it's a value play that's worth taking a chance on, right? Because when they're healthy, they've shown themselves to be a formidable team. If I were to take a sleeper, I'm going to go down the board. And that's Houston at 15-1. A Houston Rockets team that I was on way before everybody else was. Yes, I just patted myself on the back with them. Amy Udoka's team plays solid defense. So when you start looking at teams that could make a run here, I like Houston at 15-1. Here's the other thing, folks. With a conference with Oklahoma City and Dallas and Denver and Memphis and Minnesota and Phoenix and Golden State and Houston and the Lakers and the Clippers, seeding will become important. When you start talking about number 1 seed, you can't take this, folks. It's minus 650 for Oklahoma City to get the number 1 seed. Memphis is 14-1. Houston's 19-1. And if you really think about it, they are 4 or 5 games clear of everyone else. But why do you not want to take anybody else, even on a flyer? Simply put, Memphis has the toughest schedule left in the NBA. Houston has the 4th toughest schedule left in the NBA. Denver is at 15th toughest schedule in a tough division. Dallas just got an injury, and they're 8th. So when you look at anybody 28-1 or less, there's nothing worth taking. So this is a clear stay away in regards to what you want to take in regards to Western teams to get the number 1 seed. Coming up next, we end today's podcast previewing 4 games in the NBA on Friday night and then a buzzer beater in college basketball. We lost another great coach. We'll talk about that and my picks for my scouting report after this commercial break. Welcome back to the Betting Above the Rim podcast, and it's time for a scouting report where I give you my previews of some of the top games in college or in the NBA. Today, we're going to stick with the NBA. NBA's got a really good slate Friday night. There are no lines out for FanDuel yet, but I at least want to give you my leans and my plays of what I'm thinking. First off, Knicks head to Orlando to take on a depleted Orlando Magic team. Really quick, just want to let you know, Paolo Banchero was on the court today doing stuff. I don't know if he's back by Friday, but something to be on the lookout for. Knicks should be the favorites on the road in this matchup. If you're looking at this game, Jalen Suggs is going to be there, which means they're going to really try and ramp up their defense, particularly on Jalen Brunson. So that's something I would watch out for, is for Jalen Brunson points props. Let's see where to hang them out as. And look at the referee crew. I may try to figure out who the referees are. If it's a referee that calls a lot of fouls, listen. Jalen Suggs was beating the snot out of Brunson that last time. I wonder if they call that game a little bit tighter with Suggs. If that does, that's going to cause problems, and that means Brunson go over. I'll have plays on that on Friday. Second game to look at is going to be a really good matchup between the T-Wolves and the Rockets. Now listen, the T-Wolves, they got a good win last game versus versus Dallas. But we got to see how they come back and respond versus the team that we are obviously huge and high on. And that team obviously is the Houston Rockets. I'm going to most likely lay the points here with Houston. Neither team will be playing on Thursday nights. We're not looking at any kind of back. Actually, no. We will see Houston on a second leg of a back-to-back. They do play at New Orleans, so we got to see what the line is, who plays. So be on the lookout for that. If Houston gets extended to that game a little bit too much, maybe I look at Minnesota, but it's all going to depend on how well Houston plays tonight, Thursday night, at the Pelicans. Game number 3, we're looking at is a matchup between the Cavaliers and the Nuggets. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the Nuggets here, and I'm also going to take Nikola Jokic over his points, rebounds, and assists. Is just a very good player, and obviously Nikola Jokic, who gives Jared Allen problems. I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at Nikola Jokic over points, rebounds, and assists, and the Nuggets minus points at home. Last matchup, really quick, that we want to discuss that takes place Friday night, is the Mavericks versus the Suns. Two old teammates, Kyrie, KD. Kyrie, if its points prop is lower than about 25, 26 and a half, go over. Kyrie's going to try and carry the load. Also look at Klay Thompson threes versus a team in Phoenix who should get the win at home, but they're also missing a player the caliber of a Devin Booker. Let's get to our buzzer beater and big news out of college basketball as Miami coach Jimmy Larrañaga has stepped down effective immediately as the head coach of the University of Miami. And it's interestingly to put Coach Larrañaga, people have talked about, well, he left George Mason because, he was at George Mason for 14 years. Did 14 years of George Mason, 9 at Miami. This guy took this team to the Final Four in back-to-back years, including in 2023. You got to remember how damn good Jim Larrañaga is. What was the problem? After 2023, 9 players wanted to go into the portal. You have to understand, folks, what we're dealing with in the world of college basketball. What is it, folks? It's the transfer portal. It's the NIL. It's all the drama that takes place. Think about this, folks. In the ACC alone, Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, Jimmy Boeheim, Jim Larrañaga. Those are 4 coaches, like major coaches, that have all left in the last 5 or so years because of the transfer portal and NIL. Don't even get me started with someone like Jay Wright of Villanova. I'm telling you, folks, it's going to get bad, and we're going to keep losing great coaches until they get this NIL thing under control. And don't even get me started about the junk that came out that the NCAA just passed with the quarterback from Vanderbilt that's now allowing JUCO kids to get another year of eligibility. The NCAA, I've said it for a long time, they're the biggest crooks, they're the biggest gangsters in all of sports. They need to be contained because we're losing great coaches like Jim Larrañaga. This has been your Betting Above the Rim podcast, episode 108 for December 26th. For all things sports gambling, download that Sports Grid app, pregame, in-game, post-game, props, predictions, and more from the very best in the sports gambling industry. Next podcast will be on Monday. We'll get into conference play, and I'll give you some of my conference winners. This has been your Betting Above the Rim podcast. Remember, it's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Good night.